Well, good afternoon, everyone in the resin crafting world. Hello, Facebook. Hello, Instagram. I'm so glad you could join me today. My name is Catherine Swift, and I am the Chief Resinista, Creative Director, all that kind of stuff at Resin Obsession. So I'm glad you could join me today. I'm excited to be showing you the Alumilite Amazing Casting resin today. For those of you who haven't worked with it, you are in for a treat. And while we're waiting on a few more people to show up today, just a few things. While I'm demoing, it's kind of hard for me to watch questions and answer questions and that kind of thing. So especially if you're on Facebook Live, by all means, please share your question. And if I don't get to it during the broadcast, I'll try and answer it later. Instagram, unfortunately, it doesn't save your questions, but if I don't get to it, feel free to send me a private message later in case I didn't get your stuff answered. So I'm pretty excited to be showing all this to you today, and hang out until the end. If you can stick around until the end of the broadcast, then I got something to share with you. So anyway, a few things before we get started. Just make sure whenever you're working resin, you've always got your safety stuff. Today I'll be wearing my nitrile gloves. I'm working in a well-ventilated area, so just take the proper safety precautions. You can never be too safe when it comes to casting with resin. So everyone, before we get started, let's take a few minutes to say hey. I see a few waves. Hi everybody, waving. Where is everyone from? People, are you US, East Coast? Maybe you're up in the middle of the night watching this. I always love hearing where people are from. So I see Sydney, Australia. I see someone from Atlanta. I see a couple others on the West Coast. Wow, everybody's up kind of early. So, well, good. I'm pretty excited about this. I hope you guys will be too. The really, really fun thing, I think, is that you can watch this cure right before your eyes. So we're gonna have a finished casting by the time we get done here today, which I think is super cool. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you're not familiar with the Amazing Casting resin, this is available in our store. It is a polyurethane-based resin, which is what allows it to cure quickly. So let me go ahead and get some out. It mixes as a 1-to-1. So I'm not gonna mix up a whole lot here today, so I am gonna use, these are 1 ounce graduated mixing cups. We have these in our store as well, and I'm gonna mix up 10 mLs of each part. It does mix as a 1-to-1, so I'm gonna mix up 10 mLs of each. One of my little rules when I'm doing resin is open one part, measure it, close it before you ever open the second part. That keeps you from accidentally sealing your resin shut because you don't remember which lid goes back on what. Yeah, so let's try and be careful there. Okay, so I am down looking at this sideways. Yes, I am that crazy about my measuring. All right. And here's the hardener. We're going to get this part ready. Okay, so there are our 2 parts. We're not going to mix them just yet, but I'm going to have them ready. So one of the neat things I like to do with resins, and I know a lot of you like to do it as well, is you can brush stuff on the inside of a mold and the resin will take up that color. So I've got some of the Alumidust powders today, also made by Alumilite, and I'm just gonna take a little bit and dust it inside the mold. And you don't need a whole lot, just a little bit. Make sure your powders are good and dry. We'll talk more about that in a minute and why that's important. But you just want to dust them in. You can shake out the excess if you want. Oh, there's a ton. There we go. Whoops. Okay, let's pick some of that up and we'll put it in the mold. Put it in that mold. Whoops. Whoop-de-doo. Okay, let's get a different color. These are really fine. These also mix well in your resins. So let's see, we got a little bit of the blue. Put some of that in there. Maybe put it in some of that one too. This is good stuff. All right, lots of waves today. Lots of people saying hi. Thanks for stopping by. It's a little hard for me to watch the comments at the moment, so I promise I will try and get to these later if I don't get to them right away. There we go. Oh, let's do it. Oh my gosh, that's a ton, right? All right, so we're gonna dust a little of this orange in there. You dust in a little in there too. There, I love this color orange. Isn't that great? Let's put a little over here in this one too. Make it look a little crazy. All right, and then let's finish up. I got a little bit of gold, so let's finish up with some gold. Isn't that a beautiful color? That's their yellow gold. Isn't that pretty? Really sparkly. I'm just lightly dusting it inside the mold. Not a whole bunch. You know, you'll find some of these colors kind of stick better than others. All right, so I'm dusting it in there. Okay. And let's set that aside. Okay. So the other thing I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be casting into one of our silicone molds for rings. This is my favorite ring mold right at the moment. Every little bit of extra resin I have, I am putting into this mold. So I love this ring a whole bunch. Anyway, okay, let me check, see if there's any questions real quick. Do you warm? Oh, okay, so I see a question from Casey wanting to know if I warm these before I put them into the mold. That's a really great question. I do not with the Amazing Casting resin for two reasons. Number one is it mixes in a thin viscosity. It's probably the thinnest, one of the thinnest resins I've ever worked with, but polyurethanes in general are pretty thin. So I don't find that warming up the parts helps with bubbles at all. Bubbles really aren't a problem with this. The second thing is this resin is going to start to cure within about 1.5 to 2 minutes. So by warming it up, you're actually going to shorten your pot time. So I don't warm up this resin. Right now I'm here in Florida today. It's about 70 degrees inside today. You certainly would want to make sure your ambient room temperature is in the low 70s. But other than that, that's about all you need to get started with this resin. Okay. All right. Any other questions before we get started? Okay, just see a few questions. Oh, I guess you guys can hear the meowing in the background. So the meowing in the background before we get started. If you've been following us, you know a couple months ago we lost our dear studio kitty and we miss her dearly. And so we decided that we had enough room here at Resin Obsession that we could bring another kitty home. So we adopted a kitty last week and I had plans to show him to everybody before I got on live today, and he was taking a nap. And so I'm like, I'm not going to bother him. And by God, if he's not waking up about the time I get started. So we'll see how it goes today. And I'll see if I can't put up some pictures. If not, maybe I'll get him on social media here in a little bit. But he's all gray and he's a total, like, just crazy man running around wanting to play and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, meow, meow. That's who's meowing in the background in the next room. So, okay. Alrighty, so I'm only here with you guys for another 20 minutes, so let's hurry up and get this stuff mixed so that way we can watch it cure before our eyes. So, all right, I'm gonna put our part B into our part A. And we're gonna mix this together. And you can see it's really thin. I mean, just, it's probably thinner than water, if there is such a thing. So I am kind of fussy about mixing and that kind of thing. However, with the polyurethanes, I tend to be a little more, I don't want to say not as concerned with that, but because you've got such a short pot time, I don't tend to get really crazy fussy about making sure I get a good mix on it. You know, when I'm doing my epoxy, I'm mixing and I'm scraping and I'm mixing and I'm scraping and all that. Not that that's not important here, but you got to be very mindful of the clock and what you got going on. So I'm kind of just doing this quickly. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start casting it into our seashell mold. And because this stuff is thin, it pours quickly. So the reason that's important is you may want to use something like a toothpick to help guide it down into your mold. And I can start it, feel it, it's getting warm already. So I'm just filling up the mold like I would if I were using, you know, an epoxy or something else. I'm just letting the resin go down the toothpick into the mold. And that one looks like I overfilled it a little bit. I can feel my cup getting warm. So I know stuff is trying to cure. It's going to try and cure here in just a few minutes. Okay, up. So you can see that I overfilled. No big deal, because I can show you how we can fix that. Now what I am going to do kind of quickly here though, before I cast in the ring mold, hopefully this works, is I'm going to add in a little bit of the Alumalite Ocean Blue color, and we're just going to kind of stir it like this. Okay. And I'm going to pour it right into this mold. And it's already starting to get thick. And you can see what happens. Look at that. That's why you have to be very mindful about what you do with your polyurethane resins. So, kind of a neat trick, right? Neat little parlor trick to show everybody. So, you can immediately see what's going on. The resin, you know, it started clear, but it's turning colors. You can start to see it turning colors here. So let's talk for a minute about who this resin is for and who this resin maybe is not for. So I think the perfect time to use this resin is when you need a bunch of castings very quickly. I mean, you can see everything is already starting to cure. So if you, like, let's say you wanted to make a bunch of these seashell charms in an afternoon, you're, I don't know, you're putting them on a frame to decorate it, or you know, you want to make a bunch of charms for tree ornaments or something like that. This is a great resin. You're going to have demoldable castings in 10 minutes and fully cured castings in 15 minutes, which I think is fantastic. So in an afternoon, you could make hundreds of these before you know it. I think this is also a great resin if you need a hard casting that can be colored, because at the end of the day, obviously this is going to cure white, but if you just need something hard and durable and it doesn't need to be clear, then this resin will work really well for you. The other great thing about this resin is wherever you are in the world, we can ship the Amazing Casting resin to you without any problems whatsoever. There's no shipping restrictions on it. So if you're outside the United States, we can ship it to you. And if you're within the United States, we can ship it to you overnight or priority mail or you know, the expedited shipping methods without any problems. Okay. So who is this resin not for? Well, if you're a beginner, this is not where I recommend you start. I mean, you can see, you know, even with me just playing around and trying to do some stuff, I couldn't get all of it cast quickly enough to, you know, before it started to cure. So, you know, beginners, you know, inexperience tends to work against you. So this is not where I recommend you start. Also, if you need a clear final casting, obviously this is not what you want to be working with. This is not going to give you a clear final casting. Now, there are clear polyurethanes. We do not sell them. All right. And, you know, some other things you need to know is that if you're going to be working with a polyurethane resin, they are very moisture sensitive. So if you need to color the polyurethane and you don't have colorant specifically for them, this is not your resin. So today I'm using the Alumalite resin and I'm using the Alumalite colorant. These colorants are specifically designed to color any of the Alumalite resins, so you can use them with the polyurethanes and know that everything should work out just fine. You know, if you've been using epoxies and let's say you're like, oh, well, I use acrylic paints or maybe I use some other kind of funky stuff to color it, you may not get that lucky with your polyurethanes. And you'll know right away because it suds up and foams up like it's a bottle of root beer or something. So luckily here we've been doing okay. You know, the Alumidust powders and that kind of thing generally work okay. What you need to know though is that the powder needs to be really, really dry. So if for some reason you might have, I don't know, you're worried about maybe it's been in a place where it's collected moisture or something like that, this is not a powder you would want to use for these for the Alumalite resin. So we've got a few more minutes to wait on it to cure. So in the meantime, let me show you what I did yesterday so you can kind of get an idea of hopefully what we're working towards here. Let me take my gloves off while we're doing this. And I'll kind of show you what we did. Okay, so yesterday when I cast into this mold, I did the same thing. I brushed in some powder, put in the Alumalite resin, and you can see everything cured, but as you can tell, I kind of, like that, you know, I over poured and everything kind of all blended together. So what you do here is once this is about 10 minutes in the mold, you can demold it, but it's still soft. At that point, I could have pulled it out and used an X-Acto knife or used some scissors to trim around this. And so that way I still would have had the charms. You might have had some sharp edges or something to clean up, but this still, you know, are totally usable charms. I left them like this to kind of, you know, show you guys what I did. But yeah, basically I just kind of poured, and we've got, you can see we've got the same thing happening here today. You know, some of these charms aren't going to be exact with the mold. All right. Yesterday when I poured the Alumalite into this ring mold, you can see I get a really pretty ring. I didn't color it, but I got a really pretty ring, and it's, I mean, it's hard. Like I can't bend this at all. This is really nice. You can still sand it up if you've got, you know, some rough edges or something like that, but you can see, you know, we've got a really nice ring here. And if you wanted to color it, you can see, you know, my big hot mess going on here. And that's just from me not working quickly enough. So something else you need to know about using this resin, you know, one of my things that I try and make sure everybody knows is when you use a particular resin, you need to know minimum and maximum mixing amounts. What I would tell you the maximum mixing amount for the Alumilite Amazing Casting resin is the amount that you can properly mix and use in the 2 minutes. So in this case, if I hadn't stopped to put color in, I probably could have gotten it into this mold and done okay, but really time is working against you when you're using this resin, so just be mindful of that. And, you know, chalk this up to mistakes. This isn't the first time I've done this. Okay, you know, it's a good learning thing, and I'm glad that I could show you guys and that you didn't have to experience it for yourself. So it looks like everything is curing okay. Let's take a feel. Yeah, it's nice and it's cured. Well, I shouldn't say it's cured. It's firm. It's a little rubbery. So we're going to give it a couple extra minutes here and see if it, just give it a little more time before we demold it. I'm with you guys for about another 10 minutes or so. In the meantime, let me take a few questions. Anybody have any questions or any, have you maybe tried this resin before and you really like it or you didn't have good experience with it? Any, you know, what would you like me to talk about? Okay, so Melissa's asking about sanding and if you wet sand or dry sand. I always wet sand because I worry about the resin dust, and regardless of the resin, so whether it's polyurethane or epoxy. So I always, unless it's just a little like, I just kind of need to buff up an edge a little bit, but if I'm doing some serious sanding, like let's say this, side really came out uneven and I needed to sand it, if I'm gonna, you know, put my sandpaper down and do this kind of thing, then I really make sure I've got wet, dry sandpaper, so that way the dust stays in the water, and two, the piece doesn't get as hot, so you don't typically worry about stuff melting or getting soft. So, okay, all right. Use a special sandpaper. Okay, so Melissa's also asking if I use a special sandpaper. Pretty much any wet dry sandpaper will work. You should be able to find a wet dry sandpaper, the really coarse stuff, at any kind of home improvement store. The fine grit stuff can be a little harder to find. And when I say fine grit, I'm talking like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 grit. Those you generally can find at an automotive parts store. So if you like look, you know, back in the section where you can get stuff for car restoration, like buffing out scratches and that kind of thing, you can get little sheets of it that is about, 1,000 grit and higher. So when I sand, I always start with something coarse, 200, 400, something like that, and then end with at least 1,000 or higher to make sure and hide all those scratches. So, okay. All right, let's see. What other questions do we have? Okay. So just a few, a few questions, or just a few other comments I'm seeing too about a bunch of you are saying you've never used this kind of resin before. It can be a little intimidating. I mean, like I always joke, right? The resin always wins, right? The resin won today. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. The resin is always going to win. But it's fun. I try and embrace them as learning opportunities, right? This is the best chance you'll ever get about working with resin or learning about resin, is pushing it to its limits and actually seeing what you can do with it. So, all right, let's see how we're doing here. Okay, so we're a little firmer now. So let's go ahead and try and demold these and let's see what happens. So at this point, it hasn't been the full 15 minutes for a cure, so they're still gonna be a little rubbery. So we just need to be careful when we pull these out. So let's just go ahead and see what we got here. Okay. Oh, so there's a seashell, and we got a little extra. So at this point, this is really soft enough that you could just trim that up with scissors pretty easily. Let's see what we got here. Another seashell, a little purple and orange seashell. Okay, let me get this out of the way. Oh, careful. Get this stuff off my fingers. Let's get this out of the way. Okay. Let's pull this one out. So here's a nice little, this is one I intended just to stay white. Same thing, we could trim that up. Oh, there we go. Pretty little blue seashell, and it's stuck to another one. So we got a couple little blue seashells here. Oh, look at that orange. Didn't that turn out great? Another pretty orange one. And then let's see how this yellow gold turned out. Oh, look at that. Isn't that pretty? Really pretty and bright. Love that yellow gold. Love that. So, and you see that the mold is, you know, all clean in terms of like, no sticky resin or anything like that on it. At this point, you know, I would wash up my mold, a little bit of soap and water, dry it really well, and use it again. So let's take out my half ring here. You can see it didn't quite make it down into the band, but let's go ahead and see what's going on here and what I was at least attempting to get. But you can see if I'd have poured it fast enough and gotten in an entire ring, see that swirling? Isn't that cool? I mean, that's like, this would have been like a really awesome ring if I'd have gotten it cast all the way. But you can see all the stripes, and it's striped with the white, and it's just totally random, and that would have been like the best ring, right? Let's pretend. Okay, ready? Let's pretend. Let's pretend. Isn't that a beautiful ring? Gosh, I love that. So I see a question. Somebody's wanting to know if I could put the ring back in and pour more to make a full ring. And I guess I could. I hadn't really thought about it. I would probably need to clean this back up first. You know, just in general though, I don't necessarily have good luck with that, because even if when you get it back in here all the way, there's still like a little bit of air pocket between the casting and the mold, and it always seems like the resin runs in underneath. So, I mean, it's worth a try. I mean, if you've got the resin, you might, you know, and you're doing another project, yeah, heck, it's worth a try. But honestly, I don't know that that would work. But oh my gosh, this would have been like my favorite ring. Oh, I'm bummed. Anyway, you get what I'm talking about. Here are just some of the fun things you can do with it. So we've only got about another 5 minutes left. I thank everyone for hanging in with me today. Let's see what other questions we've got. So somebody's asking about what are my favorite molds to use the Amazing Casting resin with. Wow, that's a really great question. I don't know if it's so much the mold so much as what I need, or what what I'm trying to do and what the finished project is. Like the reason I like it for rings is because this is going to cure really hard. And knowing that everybody, you know, kind of, you know, is a little tough on their rings and beats their hands on hard surfaces. Same thing with bracelets. I like it for that. You know, I liked it for these seashell charms because I can make a bunch quickly and use it, say, to embellish like a picture frame, you know, something like a beach vacation, that kind of thing. In general, I would say I don't know that I personally would use it for molds with large cavities, just because like what you saw here, I would probably have problems getting like a couple of ounces of this mixed really well and getting it cast before it starts to cure. So for me personally, I probably like it for cavities with smaller volume sizes than anything. So, okay, I probably have time for one more question. So somebody specifically asked what color I used here in the blue in the ring. This is the Alumalite Ocean Blue. So you can see it's like a deeper blue. If you cast it by itself, it's almost more like a peacock blue, like when you cast it in clear resin. You could do this with any of their colors. Alumalite, we have 10 Alumalite colors. One of them is white, so you probably wouldn't want to use that one. But any of the other 9s, you could do all kinds of neat marbling and that kind of stuff before that. So to get this kind of effect. So, all right, perfect. All right, everyone. So we've only got 3 minutes left. And so I want to share something kind of cool with you. So thanks for staying today, and thanks for asking your questions. I promise I will try and get to them later if I didn't get to them during the broadcast. But for staying here today and for asking questions and watching the broadcast, I would like to share a little special with you. So until 11:59 p.m. tomorrow evening, which is what, the 22nd? God, I should have looked that up, right? Let me even think about this. What is this? What is it, right? Tomorrow night's the 22nd. Okay, well, whatever. Thursday night, March 22nd. Somebody please tell me. Is today the 21st? Can somebody tell me? Okay, so tomorrow night, Thursday, March 22nd, 11:59 p.m., or for the first 25 customers, I've got a coupon code for you, okay? So if you're watching this later, I want to make sure everybody's aware. Okay, good. Oh, thank you. Coco Brown is telling me that it's today's the 21st. Great. All right, so for the next 25 customers, or this offer expires automatically Thursday, March 22nd, 2018 at 11:59 p.m., you can get 20% off any of the Alumalite products, okay, that we sell. So it could be the Amazing Casting resin, any of the Alumidust, any of the colors, any of the clear epoxies. Okay, so any of the Alumalite products, their molding putty, some of their powder colorants, that kind of thing. Okay, all right. So between now and tomorrow night, use code AMAZING20 for 20% off any Alumalite purchase. Amazing. So AMAZING with a 20 after it. Okay, Amazing20 at checkout, and you can get 20% off any of the Alumalite products, okay? So the first 25 customers or it expires tomorrow night. So I'd like for you guys to give their stuff a try. They're a great company, great customer support, great products. Maybe you can make your own ring and it'll go all the way around this time. Oh, what am I going to do with you? And all kinds of stuff. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining in today. I've kept you your 30 minutes. Hang tight, like 15 seconds, hang tight. Okay, so I thought our new kitty would like to make an appearance here on the screen, but I hear him in some boxes, so that means I have a mess to clean up. Anyway, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining in today, and I'm so glad to see all of you, and please come see us again. If you haven't subscribed to our Instagram or Facebook channels, please do so. That way you'll get notified when we go live. Okay, everyone, we'll talk again soon. See ya.